SPR is almost nothing short of a miracle. A company that is in the information technology business lasting 50 years is almost completely unheard of.
A long time ago, now in 1973, it was pretty common for businesses to use outside professional resources like lawyers and accountants. But it was not so much a popular thing to do that with IT, and it wasn't even called IT then. It was called EDP, Electronic Data Processing. My father, Gene Filio, he himself was an EDP manager, and he realized how much difficulty he had in trying to make the computers do what he needed them to do. So he formed a business.
The company was really born in the kitchen because that's where we talked all the time. I remember one conversation where we were talking about what he would like to do. And I said, if that's what you like to do, go for it. We had 8 kids at the time.
We are the 3 oldest brothers who were involved in the business. He was like 49 years old when he started SPR. He had big dreams, he always did. He had been through ups and downs and raised a family with my mother.
They were very much a team and very much on board with the risks.
She would manage that household, which was hard to manage with all of us. We were not easy growing up and still aren't. That gave my dad the freedom to devote his energy, his intelligence, his efforts to the business without having to worry about everything else. She protected him.
I was never nervous about anything he did. He was confident, and that made me more confident.
My dad was always interested in computers.
He was not a trained salesperson. He was just a natural-born salesperson. He knew what people needed to get their job done. So when SPR came in and did the programming, whatever we said we were going to do, we did, and was delivered. And if it wasn't right, we'd fix it.
One of the things I get asked actually quite a bit at clients is, what does SPR stand for? You were looking for systems programmers back in that day. So it's systems and programming resources.
When technology was in its infancy, you had to be a little bit more descriptive of exactly what you were doing.
Our first client was a fellow by the name of Bart Murphy, and he ran a large insurance company in the Chicago area, and it had a big, large IBM mainframe computer.
My connections with SPR go back to my dad, who was a vice president at Bankers Life and Casualty, being one of SPR's first clients in the early 70s. Back in the early 70s, when my dad's company became one of SPR's clients, SPR was assisting the company in growing and developing systems. SPR gave my dad's company the manpower to put these projects over the hump and to get them implemented. We were an Irish family, and the Filios were an Italian family. We still talk to them, even though they were Italian.
I was actually dating Rob when his dad started the company. One of our first jobs was to deliver turkeys to clients at Christmas. That's the only time I've worked for SPR.
Balance is, for us, is the way we do things doesn't change. The values we have doesn't change, but the technology changes rapidly. In the early days, what we did on the mainframe computer was largely accounting systems, number crunching, inventory control, some pretty mundane kind of data management projects. During the mid-'70s and mid-'80s, it was a bunch of young people, coders and systems analysts. They tended by their nature to be independent. I was a computer science major, and I actually used punch cards. The kind of work that was going on in the 80s was a transition from a pure mainframe, that IBM kind of owned the world. The PC emerged, I believe it was around 85. The 80s really became the entry of the personal computer. And there was like $15,000 to $20,000 for a small computer. There's also mini computers in the 80s. Something in between a personal computer and a mainframe computer that could be focused on a task like shop floor control, for example, in a manufacturing plant. So we wrote software for the mainframe computer, for mini computers, and for the personal computer. The internet, of course, emerged, and so then we had browsers and browser wars.
Back in the 90s, there was a huge emphasis for SPR around Y2K remediation on mainframes. Y2K remediation was trying to protect against the way that mainframe developers represented dates in code. They represented the dates as 2 characters.
So we had to reformat them so that they could accept a 4-digit year.
The thought was that a lot of software would crash. There were even crews on standby on New Year's Eve waiting for software to crash.
SPR hired really good talent that had nothing to do with computers necessarily. They might have had a course or two, but some of them were like musicians and like that, but they had the skill to creatively think through a problem-solving issue.
There's a lot of talk about, well, maybe this was just a big scare and it was a hoax. Well, it was not a hoax. It was very real, very concrete stuff. These systems would not have worked. So I always, say, well, the patient lived, so we should be actually pretty proud of it.
In the early 2000s, we were part of the dot-com explosion. New tools, new languages to support the creation of websites.
Back in the early 2000s, we built a huge distributed system that performed rate comparison for a major hotel chain for all of their individual hotels and then all of the competitive hotels. This was back in the early days of the internet for the corporate world, and this was incredibly innovative. We were able to go out and extract all this unstructured data on web pages across the internet and pull it back to compare rates for our customer.
One of my favorite projects that I worked on in that early 2000s was for a client building out what was called a global modeling platform. What made this particular project complicated was that we were trying to build a cloud-based machine learning modeling platform before cloud-based machine learning modeling platforms were actually commonly available. We were known as the people to go to for the hard problems.
A lot of technologies have changed over the decades, but one thing that has remained the same is the way that we work together, the way that we respect one another, the way our teams collaborate.
In 2003, we only had 10 employees in SPR. Today, we have more than 300 consultants. The growth has been all organic, and we've always, every year, tried to add to our staff with other talented individuals.
Our people are very proud of the work they do. And the teams that we can put together, they're remarkable.
Our philosophy is the best way to approach software development is with small teams of really talented people, as opposed to larger teams of varying degrees of experience, which most large consulting firms are known for. Like, we'd rather come in with a SWAT team of really great people and get more work done with a smaller group.
The type of people that work at SPR are like a family. They rely on each other. They not only work together, they socialize together.
I love working for SPR because it is a family-oriented company. All ideas are good ideas. I can freely go to leadership and tell them what I'm thinking and what I'd like to do for the company, and they're very open to that feedback.
As a newer employee, they've been incredibly welcoming.
We like to give people opportunities to do things above and beyond their day-to-day job.
I actually liked working there so much that I worked there twice. Looking back at my careers at SPR, the aspect that I think I appreciate the most is that they allowed me really to be anybody that I wanted to be. There was no constraints on what I wanted to learn or the different technologies that I wanted to get into or even where I wanted to take my career path.
We actually care about the people. And I think because we care about the people do a better job at the clients.
I think a common thread among people that work at SPR is that they're curious. They want to learn.
SPR just has a culture of continuing education, and they want their employees to learn, and they want their employees to get great experience and love their job, and that's why I'm here.
All of the people I work with at SPR continued to be mentors to me. They were advisors, people that I trusted. They taught me technology, sales, other things. People want to work for a company they like.
SPR has always been community-minded. It started a long time ago with working with professionals with disabilities and technology.
My oldest child of 7 children is disabled. Makes me more aware of not the limitations of others, but the strength and the power others have when it appears to be limited.
Civic engagement supports the career development and placement of historically overlooked populations, disability, under-resourced neighborhoods, as well as girls and women into technology. We expect our candidates and colleagues with disabilities to produce at the same level. We did it before it was cool.
It's a company that's been in the same family for now the 3rd generation. They really care about pleasing our clients and they care about delivering beyond the build.
Delivering beyond the build is our way of saying, let's not do the minimum required in order to meet our goals with the customer. Let's really do more than that to provide as much value as possible.
The SPR people across the board really know how to solve customers' problems.
The way I explain SPR is that I say we build software that makes the world go around.
Think of a company that does something in the business world but doesn't know how to do it digitally. Doesn't have applications to do it, hasn't automated it, doesn't have systems to make it optimized. And so what SPR does is help them do that.
My name is Tiffany Zadeh, and I am the CIO of Corporate and Enterprise Systems at a large insurance company in town. It was in the early 2000s that I first was introduced to SPR. We were running a major project that was running into some issues with testing. I mean, literally within a week, we had a great team of people that stepped in and started testing on this major program, and they got it back on track. It was an amazing experience, especially with a company that I had no prior background with, and literally they just came in and they knew immediately what to do, got the test script set up, started testing, and got us back on track literally within a couple of weeks. We have been doing work with them since, and they have gotten me out of a number of difficult programs.
We're accountable to every government agency that has an acronym. So it's very highly regulated. The application that SPR developed for us works with our ERP system and pulls all the customer-specific data. It's very intuitive for our people to use.
My first experience with SPR was 14 years ago, where I was at a company where we had a specific problem we were trying to solve with regard to our CRM implementation. The system launched and the product launched, and it survived for many, many years after that. I've worked with them many, many times since that. At 3 or 4 different companies I've been with in the last 15 years. One of the most fascinating ones was a company I was with in Chicago that was a very hyper-growth company. Startup to a multi-billion-dollar valuation in 18 months. And in that company, we had to grow the company very, very quickly. We'd signed down some massive contracts. After I had heard about the size of the contract, I picked up my cell phone and I called SPR and I said, I need 30 developers as fast as you could get them.
I started working with SPR in 2014. A couple weeks before a PCI audit, our director of InfoSec quit. And the VP of Finance and Operations called me. She was frantic, and we had our first PCI audit coming up in 3 weeks. And as a startup, our InfoSec team was one person, and he was now gone. So I called SPR, texted them that night. The next day, I was on the phone with their security team, and they gave us someone who could kind of step in and help us run our security department the next day, pretty much. And we successfully passed that PCI audit 3 weeks later.
We call SPR when we need help with almost anything related to technology development.
SPR has very strong talent, able to understand a lot through very little words.
This place brings you great people, but also, leaders, people who know what they're doing, people who don't just kind of conform, but they also bring best practices.
SPR is without a doubt our best vendor. I've been in manufacturing for 30 years. I'm not technical at all. I'm able to explain what I need to SPR in completely non-technical terms, and they can just make it happen.
SPR is almost nothing short of a miracle. And I say that because it's lasted 50 years. And a company that is in the information technology business lasting 50 years is almost completely unheard of.
The company has always been able to see where needs exist and develop solutions for those needs.
I think the reason SPR has lasted 50 years is the technology just keeps changing, and we just keep figuring it out.
SPR is very adaptable to change.
We have a unique business model.
They invest in their people, and you have to constantly be training in this rapid-fire technology environment to stay up to date and relevant, and they do.
They last because they're on the cutting edge.
Innovation fosters innovation. I think that's why it survived over the last 50 years.
I think anything that lasts has to have a very strong foundation.
I'm proud of Gene and what he did. I think it takes a certain type of bravery to start out a company.
I have no intention of selling SPR. Ever.
When you're part of a legacy, it becomes your legacy too. I'm retiring within a week from today, and I'm honored to end my career with SPR. They're in my heart and soul.
I can honestly say that I think we are built to last, and we will be here for another 50 years.
You know, I don't know if I'm going to be around here for 50 years more, but there will be other people who'll be around here, and they'll have the same values and the same pride in their work that Gene Filio had when he founded the company in 1973.